But first, we go to the security concern at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort after a Chinese woman was found on the property Saturday with a thumb drive containing malware. According to court documents, Mar-a-Lago security was unable to verify that Yujing Zhang was on the access list. Due to a language barrier, Mar-a-Lago believed her to be the relative of a member with the same last name, and she was allowed access to the club. Once inside, officials say Zhang told a Secret Service agent she was going to the swimming pool and handed over 2 Chinese passports as ID. After several interviews, the criminal complaint says her belongings were searched, turning up 4 cell phones, a laptop, an external hard drive, and a thumb drive with malicious software but no swimsuit. She was then arrested and charged with making false statements and for entering a restricted area. The Miami Herald reports that Zhang was headed to an event promoted by Cindy Yang, the South Florida massage parlor entrepreneur, who also ran a business selling access to the president and his family. What the heck is going on? Trump was in Florida at the time of the breach, golfing at a different property, Trump International. He returned to Mar-a-Lago hours later. However, the First Lady and other members of the Trump family there at Mar-a-Lago, they were there when the incident occurred. The Secret Service tells the Washington Post that the agency, quote, does not determine who is invited or welcomed at Mar-a-Lago. This is the responsibility of the host entity. The Mar-a-Lago Club's management determines which members and guests are granted access to the property. This access does not afford an individual proximity to the president or other Secret Service protectees. Trump also raised security concerns when, in the second month of his presidency, North Korea launched a missile test while the president was hosting Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at Mar-a-Lago. The president turned the club terrace into a makeshift situation room, looking at documents and discussing strategy as club members stood by watching and snapping these photos. I don't really get the connection there of those 2 stories, but I will say the first one about the person who breached security at Mar-a-Lago with thumb drives and cell phones. Anyone here at this table have any concern that that actually could happen?
Yeah.
I've been to Mar-a-Lago. Have you? It's not that big a space.
Well, and think about what the Secret Service said about that. They said, our job is to protect the president. We have nothing to do with who comes in and out of Mar-a-Lago. So you could have a woman, for example, say she's there to take a dip without her swimsuit, then to make up an event that's not actually taking place that night.
She has no swimsuit?
She didn't have a swimsuit with her. But the only reason this was stopped was because a staff member at Mar-a-Lago noticed the event she was talking about and said, that event is not being held here tonight. She alerted the Secret Service, who then intercepted this woman. We don't know yet what her intent was. We know she had malware with her. But this goes to the casual nature of the Trump presidency with security, whether it's using personal cell phones or email, or Jared Kushner using WhatsApp to talk to his buddy, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. This stuff ought to concern people.
That's a generous description. The casual.
It was an introduction for you to take it.
Well, how about haphazard or incompetent? Or unknowing about the dangers of using cell phones. The pictures we just showed about that evening that Mika just told us about, the night that there was a missile launch from North Korea, and guests from Schenectady, who knows where, snapping pictures of. It's ridiculous.
But the root problem is the proximity to the president by buying access, by being president at Mar-a-Lago through an expensive membership. You are granted this entree to the closest advisors to the president. And as we've seen, the president himself sometimes dropping by weddings, dropping by events on the grounds. And so it's pay to play that ultimately is so corrosive by this just flagrant disregard for security practices.
Yeah, or there are meetings at Mar-a-Lago, Jonathan Swan, that we don't necessarily know about. I mean, it just raises questions.
Well, one thing that's really important to point out is just how much business, official business, gets done at Mar-a-Lago. And, I just recall that moment when Trump turned Mar-a-Lago into an open-air situation room. I mean, he was literally sitting there at the table. People were having dinner, the terrace, open air. He's got the laptop open, and they're looking at national security information. The Japanese are there. I mean, this was early in the administration. But these are the scenes you see play out. You have the president, we've never seen this before, in close proximity with club guests. I mean, before Trump bombed Syria, he sat, now this was a secure room, but it was at Mar-a-Lago. He sits around the table and asks all his advisors, Wilbur Ross, should I do it? You know, the last round of it. So this is not like, it's not like this is just a vacation home. There's actual serious business and national security business being done there. And just the other point of context here, it's interesting that it's a Chinese national apparently who's been apprehended. This is ahead of Trump doing. We all think, and we're all told by sources who know, that likely the bilat with President Xi is going to happen at Mar-a-Lago. So is this in connection with that? It raises all sorts of questions about what preparation is being done ahead of a very high stakes and important meeting at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
It's really stunning.
So we'll follow this. This is all we know at this point, but certainly there are more questions to be asked.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.